We just witnessed a very big update around XRP that I do think everyone that holds XRP should be focused on, because what we are witnessing behind XRP is a very large accelerated shift to make sure that XRP is in the hands of every single institutional player. And I'm going to be talking about this. I'm going to be addressing it. So sit back, relax. Welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. So we could see on the chart when the news dropped. It was earlier today at about roughly 8:35 a.m. And from that point, XRP went from $2.18 to an initial $2.25. And then after that, it did continue to rise up throughout the day, hitting about almost $2.30 at about 4:05 p.m. Now, currently, trading volume is up over 46, almost 47%, and we're sitting at about roughly $3.9 billion. This is great to see, and we could even see from the XRP rich list bot that there's been some significant rich list changes across the board on some very large exchanges, over 500,000, over 790,000 XRP exchanged, and this is positive gains. We could also see some other additional updates just throughout the day. In terms of like some of these exchanges, we saw a lot of big updates throughout the entire day, which led to, of course, the $3 billion plus, almost $4 billion in trading volume. Now, it's not a massive amount of trading volume compared to other spikes on XRP, but we did see some very significant inflows into XRP today because of the news. Now, we'll get to that here in a second in terms of what the news actually is, but this is what the current overall price chart for XRP looks like. Now, we did get the weekly candle close. If we go to the weekly, it's going to look a little bit different, but this is what the weekly looks like. Nothing too crazy just yet. We are still rejecting off of the upper trend line on the lower time frames, and personally, the big thing that I'm looking at when it comes to any major candle close, I'm mainly looking at closes above the previous highs. So we want to really break over the mid-March highs. If we look at the 3-day, we can see that we are respecting that upper trend line. And this is what I mean, right? Like on the 3-day, the previous highs were originally the April, like the middle of April highs that we already surpassed. And now we're really kind of looking at clearing these highs back in March to create a higher high structure. We already have the higher lows, and we already have a nice little fake out on the 3-day here. But I'm looking at a little bit more chop and a little bit more consolidation before a much larger expansion on XRP. The good news about this news is that we started to see a lot more inflows and a lot more trading volume of XRP, and that's just pressure building and building and building. So we might sell off a little bit more here, and we might tap around like $2.10 before we just kind of chop sideways and then get that expansion to the upside. And also, by the way, the big thing is, Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin going to do next? How are stocks going to impact, Bitcoin, tomorrow? Because again, it is a new week. The market's open again. And, it could definitely impact Bitcoin and, of course, XRP. When it comes to Bitcoin, the main thing that I'm really kind of looking at here is just clearing out some of the previous highs as well. And ultimately, we want to see 100K being broken on Bitcoin. Initially, clearing 95K and getting a daily candle close over 95K will be huge, but the main focus here is 100K on Bitcoin. So as long as Bitcoin doesn't completely nuke or sell off in a huge way, XRP should hold that lower trend line and maintain the trend before we do eventually break out above this upper trend line. And from that point, I do think that we target the March highs. That's around roughly $2.55. And then after that, we target some of the previous highs prior to that, like for an example, $2.74. And then we really kind of look at the, highs from, back in January, which is right around $3.30 some cents. And I do think that that will allow us to break $3.40, create a new high for this cycle, and also make a new all-time high on CoinMarketCap, well over $3.84. So, $4 will be the target once we do officially break out. And I also do think that with how high Bitcoin dominance is, and where Bitcoin's currently trading, alt season could definitely quickly follow up around like the June timeframe into July. So the summer looks pretty good for altcoins. But outside of this chart, I've also been, like I said, focused on what's been happening. Now, the big news back in the beginning of the month was Ethereum's ETFs launching. Now, this was the 2x long daily XRP ETF, which did launch. Now, everyone hates these types of ETFs because they are futures ETFs. The futures ETFs are not going to impact the actual underlying asset in terms of like spot trading. It's the same for Bitcoin, it's the same for Ethereum, and it is the same for XRP. Do I think that these are good for XRP? Yes, because any ETF that is getting approved is going to accelerate the push on the spot ETFs. Now, Teucrium's ETF, like I said, went live already in the beginning of the month. Then we got CME Group launching their capital efficient futures of XRP on May 19th. We got this on the 24th. And then we also got a big one, right? We got the big one, and it's actually what caused the initial spike on XRP, like I showed you guys in the beginning of the video back here. And that was this one. And I said, I think I can say this for the XRP holders. Boom. And here we got the announcement from Uphold, XRP ETF approved, because this was one of the first initial ones to get approved. Now, everyone is, of course, talking down on this because it is a futures ETF, which I'll get to here in a second on why this is still significant. But we do have latest. The SEC has approved a public launch date of April 30th for ProShares Trust XRP ETF. Now, what I find very interesting about this, okay, is that this is one, just like Teucrium's, this is one of a few ETFs that are now going to be trading live. Of course, we have the dates that we still have to pay attention to. You know, Teucrium's is already live. This is April 30th. CME Groups is on May 19th. But this is still very good for XRP because it's more exposure to XRP. A lot more people are going to be aware of XRP. They're going to have more access to it, etc. But I do want to put a spotlight on this post here that I saw from Armando Pantoja over on X, and it's kind of outlining exactly what's happening with these ETFs, even if it's not a spot ETF. We have breaking. SEC approves an XRP ETF, and it's huge. No, it's not a spot ETF yet. It's a futures ETF, but don't underestimate what this means. Here's the breakdown. Wall Street attention. Big players have a way to trade XRP. Mainstream legitimacy. XRP is officially entering the elite league. Momentum builder. Futures ETFs pave the way for spot ETF approvals. And yes, that's something that a lot of people are kind of overlooking here. You know, Bitcoin had a futures ETF long time before the spot ETF even got, you know, discussed and even approved. So when we think about this, yeah, I do think that the futures ETFs are the big starting point. And the good news about this is that, you know, XRP looks as though it's going to be the first one out of the gate to get that spot ETF approval outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum. This is very good to see. The bigger picture, every major crypto that got a futures ETF eventually got a spot ETF. Bitcoin futures ETF in 2021, Bitcoin spot ETF in 2024. Now, I know what you guys are probably thinking. Well, that means that we have to wait 3 years, right? No. The reason why the spot ETF around Bitcoin was so slow is because of the crypto thesis that the original SEC chair had. We now have a new SEC. We can see that crypto is becoming mainstream. Everyone's talking about crypto. So it makes sense to get these ETFs approved as soon as possible. XRP is now following the same blueprint. The future, a spot XRP ETF would unleash real buying pressure, 100%. Supply would tighten, 100%. And price could explode higher, 100%. Futures ETF equals first domino. Spot ETF equals the tipping point. XRP's long-term setup just got way stronger. Stay early, stay sharp. The biggest moves come before the headlines catch up. I completely agree. I think that this is a great post, and I think that it outlines exactly why, you know, this futures ETF is a big deal. Now, talking about this, we did get an approval in Brazil, and this is actually around a spot XRP ETF. This is from Stellar Expert. XRP just got institutional approval without the US. The SEC wanted to delay it. The US kept playing games. Meanwhile, Brazil just did what America couldn't, approved the world's first spot XRP ETF by Hashdex. Here's why this changes everything. Hashdex's spot XRP ETF launch in Brazil is historic, not a futures product, not a synthetic basket, a real physically backed XRP ETF open for institutional investors and the public. The floodgates are officially open. The ETF gives XRP institutional grade legitimacy, massive liquidity boost, new visibility in traditional finance, and it's happening without needing US regulatory approval. The empire strikes from the outside first. Brazil may seem small to some, but it's one of the largest and fastest growing crypto markets globally, and history shows once one country opens the gates, Others follow fast. Spot Bitcoin ETFs started abroad first too. Now look. And what's crazy about this is also remember that the Brazilian FX bank Brasa Bank is launching their stablecoin. This got announced back in February, and this is going to be on the XRP ledger. It uses the XRP ledger. So it's no big surprise that Brazil is starting early with the spot ETFs around XRP. The SEC can stall XRP in courtrooms. They can delay ETFs in DC, but they can't stop global adoption. And now institutions have a new on-ramp to XRP outside US borders. The momentum has shifted. The narrative is changing. XRP is no longer just fighting for survival. Now it's building an institutional empire piece by piece, market by market. Ignore this at your own risk. And yeah, I do think that this is going to be an accelerant. I think that this will accelerate all of those other ETFs around XRP to get approved. I think that it's going to get, the SEC really kind of, putting the foot on the gas and getting the ball rolling here because, it's crazy that this got, completely greenlit in Brazil, not the US. This is technically a US based crypto project. And it's shocking. It's shocking that it's still getting delayed. And there's still, the SEC case is still floating around XRP, even though the case is basically done, right? It's still there. And it's still kind of holding things up. I do think that the spot ETFs in the US are still kind of getting held up by this. But what Brazil just did, it accelerated everything, in my opinion. And we got to remember that, back in the middle of April, there was a post from TradingView where we have why XRP could beat Dogecoin Solana in ETF race and trigger a price surge. Number one, XRP has been outperforming all of these other, assets in the top 10, right? I've talked about it. XRP is absolutely killing the game right now. But this was talking about live ETF applications around XRP being well over 10. What's crazy about this is we have the list. There's over 18. I think that it's actually up to 20 now, which is wild. Okay. This is a massive amount of ETFs. And as you guys can see, yes, Hashdex was one of them that just got approved. ProShares just got approved. I do think that all of these additional ones are set to get the green light. And it's going to happen over the coming weeks, in my opinion. And I do think that this will also lead to the SEC completely dropping the XRP Ripple case. I also think that, by the summertime, this space is going to look completely different. And I think that XRP is going to be trading significantly higher as well. All of these big moves are happening in a very short amount of time. I've talked about it in recent videos. On all of the big moves that Ripple just made over just the last couple weeks. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but this is exactly what you want to see. And these types of approvals, like what Brazil just did, I love these types of moves. It's just like what the US is doing with stablecoins, right? From what the US did with stablecoins, now we're seeing every other nation follow through with their stablecoin plans as well. This is, again, it's just a big, back and forth war on who can be first. And once, one nation announces something, or once you see an approval or a big move, everything else follows through. It's kind of like tokenization, right? Once, BlackRock started to tokenize, you had Franklin Templeton, Wisdom Tree, Fidelity, like all of these big names jumping on the ship as well. The same goes with ETFs. The same goes with, adoption or any big move happening. I do think that this is, I think that we're about to see a big shift around XRP, and it's going to be, to get XRP in the hands of every institutional player. And if you don't believe me, all you have to really, see is just the list of all of the big players that are trying to get an XRP ETF trading. I think that, once we start to see a lot of these go live, BlackRock's going to be, in the game. I think every single big player is going to be in the game. State Street might even, apply for one. It's definitely surprising that there isn't a spot XRP ETF in the US trading live. So it's only a matter of time. It's inevitable. And I'm definitely looking forward to this. And I think that this will significantly impact the value of XRP. I mean, already XRP did jump just off of the news of the ProShares one getting approved, and that's a futures one. It's not even a spot. And once we get the spot ETFs approved, I think that they're going to see a very significant amount of inflows into them, which could significantly impact not just the value of XRP, but also the supply as well. I mean, we watched Bitcoin supply diminish greatly on exchanges over just the last couple months, and that's because of the large institutional players, hoarding up a large amount of Bitcoin to cover the ETF. So I think that the same goes for XRP. I think XRP so far this year has been absolutely incredible. I've talked about it. It's outperformed Bitcoin. It's outperformed Ethereum and all the other, projects in the top 10. So it makes sense for XRP to get a spot ETF trading live. And once we do, I think that it's going to be a very big deal. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord on the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.